Welcome to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day with your hosts, David Towner and Sam McEwen. If this podcast does speak to you, please like, share, and comment. Let your friends know all about us. And now, here's your hosts, Dave and Sam. Well, David, welcome back.
Hey, Sam.
And today is my favorite day. We're going to talk about direction.
And we're standing.
Yes, I know.
You know, we're not as lazy today.
Yeah, but you know the problem is we're standing, we both have microphones, and that is dangerous. You got two preachers with microphones.
It can be.
It can be. But truth number 4 is I have direction. And one of the quotes you used was from John F. Kennedy, effort and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. Now, I know there's several scriptures behind the direction, purpose. You know, Proverbs 16:9 says, the mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps.
That's, Tanya, our verse of our marriage.
Yes.
Is that because, you know, isn't it life interesting, right?
Yep.
Life is interesting because we may have all the plans we want and have it all written out, and I'm a planner, and Tanya is too, so we write out all these plans, and we used to put everything down perfectly fine, thinking God would just follow our plans.
Right.
And we found out that that's not what that verse means. Yes, I have a responsibility to write out plans, but I also have a responsibility to be sensitive to God's leading and where he wants it to go.
Well, and that's part of our problem as Christians is and Christian businessmen. So we can go all the way back to Franklin Covey and his day planner, right? Yep. And so they tell you to write out your plan. This is A, B, C, D. This is the importance and everything else. And then the alarm clock goes off and there's nothing left to chance, right? And so, but we get this in our mind that, but I have a plan, and we're married to a plan rather than to leading of the Holy Spirit.
Well, and it's good. I mean, we need that plan.
Oh, yes,
the Lord has
definitely
given us minds to do that. So in business, you need to have a business plan for that business, right? For your family, for your marriage. I ask anyone that I work with on premarital counseling is to write out your vision for your marriage and your future family. And so that's a good thing, but we also know that life happens. Yeah. And for me, and why this book was written is because life happened with cancer. You've had to deal with that as well.
With cancer and heart.
Yeah,
yep.
So both of us have had to deal with something that just popped out of the blue, hit us, completely shocked us, and all the plans you have. Matter of fact, in the middle of this, and I don't write this in the book, and you wouldn't know this too, but we were in a building campaign. We were just about to start a new building campaign with the church, and we actually had a big party set up. Matter of fact, a huge tent outside, catered food everywhere. One of the American Idol guys came over and sang to do the whole thing. It was really neat. And we were ready to raise the funds, and the funds came in very quickly, which was great because I think we were being wise with what we were doing. And then the minute that started, literally a couple of days after that, I was down and in the hospital dealing with cancer, and everybody's going, what's going on? Our plans are not working out exactly what we thought.
Right. So you tell a story in here about van camping. You wanna enlighten us? Okay,
so there's some people who are glampers. Okay, Tanya and I call them glampers.
Right.
They're the ones with the big, RVs that is like basically driving a house. Okay, I'm jealous. I would like to have that, but I don't. And but what we did, my parents did, is they did the best they could. Mm-hmm. Our family didn't have a lot of money, but my parents wanted us to see the United States. So my dad actually jerry-rigged, his name is jerry-rigged the van. It was really done well. He made cabinets and things in it. We actually had the top taken off the van and a kind of a camper area put on top of it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And so we went on these trips across the country. No air conditioning. And but it was my parents had a plan. They had a plan. They wanted us to see museums and, I mean, all the different stuff from the largest, ball of yarn to whatever. I mean, it was all that kind of stuff. A lot of Route 66 things.
Oh, okay.
And so we did a lot of that, and we hit every state going around, and it took 4 weeks around there, 4 or 5 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
So my dad would take all his vacation just for that
all
trip.
at one time. Yeah.
And it was really a neat experience, but what it showed me, it reminded me that the mind of man has this, it makes his plans, but God directs it. And we had some strange things happen on some of these trips. My dad actually had a kidney stone that hit him right in the middle of one of these trips. Yeah, you want to talk about 4 little kids with the parent, with mom across the country somewhere? Yeah. that was not how it was supposed to be.
No.
But it ended up working out. We did perfectly fine with it.
It usually always does work out, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure he had it. Now he didn't have GPS, didn't have Google
GPS,
Maps.
yeah, we had maps. We had paper maps,
Yep.
right? But my dad was so good at this stuff. If we got lost, he could put his compass out and find out where we're going.
Where you're
He
going.
was one of those kind of guys.
Yep.
Not me. If I don't have the GPS, they're going to say, we're going to go north. I'm going, where is that?
Which ways?
Yeah.
Well, I was sitting. You think that's funny. I was sitting in the car the other day, waiting for my wife to come out, and I'm sitting there, and I look at the compass thing on the rearview mirror, and it says I'm headed due north, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm sitting looking south. Since we've been in Florida, I cannot get north, south, east, and west straight.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know what it is, but I'm sitting there. No, I'm not going north. So you said 4 weeks you traveled.
Yes.
And how many states?
Each trip, I think we hit about 30 states, and so we would cross the same ones. But we ended up hitting all of the 48 states.
Oh, okay.
In the down here. Obviously, we didn't go to Alaska. We didn't go to Hawaii. There's no way we could afford those trips. But hey, you could do it in a VW van. So it was 4 kids, mom and dad, and you had my brother and I sleep on the top. My other sister, Dawn, would sleep underneath my parents, who slept on the bottom, and he made this whole makeshift bed.
Wow.
And then my other sister slept in the front seats with this like little hammock thing that my dad made. That's when we were small. When we got bigger, then some of us had to move outside, and we had this kind of camp thing next to it. But it was just, I look back, and it was really good memories. I just enjoyed that time. And anytime I think about Proverbs 16:9, I think of my parents on that trip.
Yeah. And those are good memories.
Yes, they are.
They're really good
And
memories.
I think everybody, you may have those too. I hope you do. If you don't, you may want to make one of those memories, right?
And folks who are listening today with young children and stuff like that, make those plans. You want to do those things. I mean, we're in Florida. You could spend 4 weeks going to the parks in Florida and hit all that kind of stuff. So you had a really bad day coming out of this. You talked about it a little bit in the book. You called it a bad everything day.
Oh, yeah, we all get those. I mean, we get the bad everything days where just nothing works, nothing goes right. I just had one just recently, so I'll just go with that. A couple of weeks ago, it seemed like everything in the church was going wrong. And of course, that's you don't use that word. I'm saying it in a joking manner because not everything went, horrible, but it felt like that. It felt like, okay, this meeting got canceled. This thing happened here. We got hit with another bill at home. We got hit with another bill here at the church. We got hit with people who are getting hit with COVID, other people who are dealing with others with diseases. And it was all on one day. Right. And I hit my limit. I just hit my limit. And you were actually part of that. You got to see my limit.
Yep.
And I went, I was just venting to whoever was in the office at that time. And then I just said, I got to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And I went back into my office, which I will do, and get my head on straight, which is sit down on the floor, focus on one verse, and focus on that God's in charge of this thing. The mind of man plans his ways, the Lord directs his steps, right? Jeremiah 29:11, the whole idea of, for I know all the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a future and a hope.
Right.
And when I get focused on that, then that bad everything day is not as horrible. It's again, I always bring it up here. I gaze at God, and the minute I start doing that, I can glance at the problems, still look at them, but not be overwhelmed by them. Yeah. And so, the bad everything days, everybody has those. You've had those.
I've had them.
You've had them in business.
Yes. God is God. I'm not, and I'm okay with that.
God is God. Yeah, that's my statement I say all the time because sometimes in the business world, and those who are in the business world have their own business, work in the corporate world, whatever. Sometimes we are God. We try to play God rather than listening to the one who's actually in charge of this thing.
So back to the Jeremiah 29:11 verse, God has plans to prosper us. Three points that you make, 3 certainties, we call them. God has plans to prosper us, to protect us, and to position us. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting about that, the prosper, we hear that, we think financial.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So every business person going, I want that, and he will. The Scripture says He'll bless.
Right.
Now, How he's going to do that is, it could be in different means, but it could be financial.
Right.
And there are people who've experienced those, and we believe that God could do that. In this case, it's talking about the shalom idea.
Yes.
The shalom idea of having peace that transcends all understanding, to be able to be prosperous in the way I treat God and I treat the people around me, and I get to experience His blessings in my life through that peace, through that contentment, and I've got to experience that. The second part of it, though, is because God wants to bless us,
right,
and He wants us to have that peaceful world, even in in every day's going wrong kind of day.
Right.
The second part that I thought was interesting is He does want to protect us. And when I was in the hospital, I was really wondering, God, are you wanting to bless me? Because I don't feel at peace right now. And at the same time, are you wanting to protect me? And couldn't you have protected me from this cancer, right? So a lot of people think, if I'm with Jesus, then there's not going to be anything that's going to go wrong. That's not the key here.
It's not.
The key is that we're going to have trouble. It's just who am I going to look to and who am I going to rely on? And that's where the protection came in.
Right.
That He protected me from really, I didn't know if I was going to be around.
Right.
And He gave me more moments.
Right.
You've experienced this lately.
Just recently, and the whole gaze at God, glance at the problem has been very relevant to me in the last few weeks, and the protection, there's a peace that comes in. They go hand in hand, the prosper and most people miss the peace that comes with prospering in God, the peace that comes to your spirit and your soul when you know that God is in control and you're willing to submit. Most of us aren't so willing sometimes. We have an obedience problem from time to time.
Everyone does. We all do, man. We all struggle with being obedient.
Yep.
But then not only that is that the protection, and He does protect us. Now, part of that protection could be that He's going to take us home. My mom was near the end of her life, and we prayed. We just said, Lord, heal her immediately or take her. Did that with my dad also.
Right.
Heal him or take him. And He took both of them relatively quickly. And so for us, there was a protection from, the constant pain that could be there.
Right.
Jabez, prays that, God bless us and enlarge our territory, which business people love hearing.
Yes.
And then also keep us from pain, which all of us would want to hear. Right. So the protection is there. The last part, which is the fun part with this one, and there's a woman named Misty. Misty is one of Tanya's cousins.
Okay.
And Misty's married to a very successful businessman. She's a successful businesswoman. They have a couple of kids. And this is the part she liked. She was one of the persons that read through my book and did some of the editing and that kind of thing and helped me with some of the spiritual matters in here to make sure I've got this, down. And she said, David, I really like the idea that God has positioned us. When you wrote this in here, she goes, I like the idea that where I'm at, that I'm bloom where I'm planted. I had an old college professor that I interviewed when I was doing my first master's degree. And I interviewed a bunch of college provosts and professional athletes and that kind of thing. And in that, he just looked at me and said, David, you just got to bloom where you're planted. You got to bloom where God put you. Right? So instead of complaining about where God put you, why don't you just grow where you're at? And that's hard to do sometimes. It is.
Because
I know I whine, and I'll get caught up in the whining, right?
Yeah.
And you've been in there, too.
I've been there. The bloom where you've been planted is, are we planted deep?
Yeah.
Do we have deep roots?
Yeah.
And are we willing to say, okay, God, your time is coming. His time for us is coming.
Sure.
It may not be here now, but if we're ready to be obedient and to grow where He has us now. And that's so many folks I found through the years of ministry, and I'm sure you have, so many folks are looking for what's that next ministry opportunity.
I've done that.
Yeah, I know.
I've thought about, I remember in 2007, 2008, we had churches in California asking us to come out and take over, basically, or become teaching pastors at large churches. And we went, wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. Instead of having to fight all the stuff with a smaller church, go there, just have a good time teaching and being back into a large church setting. But that's not what God wanted for us. As a matter of fact, we turned them down because we were dealing with some family things, and we wanted to make sure we were here on this side of the country. And that's where God wanted us. He wanted us to bloom right here, and that's when we did that, when we stayed here, that's when we brought in Celebrate Recovery. That's when we, as a church, became a place that was for the hurting, and that helped us because we were hurting.
Yeah.
And so we actually grew more in our faith and better in our marriage by staying here and actually doing what God said to do, which is actually bloom where you're planted. Well, for me, I bloomed where I was planted in the hospital. I made the decision, instead of just complaining and whining, that I was going to put a smile on everyone's face, and I was going to pray for people. So I prayed for doctors, nurses, technicians. I asked them, what do you want me to pray for? Because I'm stuck here. I might as well pray for you. And so I got to bloom where I'm planted right there. And it took some time. It took about 7 days for me to get that in my head. And then I realized, I can make a difference here. So when they finally let me out of the bed, because I had that NG tube in that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. When I had that NG tube in me, I couldn't go anywhere. The minute that was pulled out, I could start going into other rooms. And I would go by and say, hey, guys, how's it going? My name's Dave. And some people would say, I'd say, do you want any prayer? And they go, no, get out of here. I go, okay. And I'd walk out, but then I'd go to another room, and someone's going, please pray for me. So I was trying to bloom where I was planted, even though I was planted in a hospital with a bunch of tubes in me and stuff. You still could do that.
If we would look at our life like it was a garden, and we would say, okay, the seed's been planted, we're watering it, it will grow, But most of us are looking at, it didn't grow yet, What am I doing wrong? That's the first thing you'll hear from a lot of folks who are trying to grow in ministry, trying to grow in their faith. What am I doing wrong? God's not speaking to me. Well, are you speaking over him? Well,
in the business world, I think that we do have to evaluate what we're doing. I mean, part of our lives is to evaluate what's going on. Some of it could be our problem.
Exactly.
That we could be doing things. If you're a business person and you're overspending on your business, what do you think is going to happen to your business? Your business is going to die eventually. If you're not going after customers and trying to keep those customers, eventually the business is going to die. So of course you have to evaluate, but in the meantime, if we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing, there's that the mind of man plans his ways. If I'm taking care of the finances, if I'm doing customer acquisitions, if I'm doing these things I'm supposed to do, then I'm doing my job. Right? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I bloom where I'm planted right there. Maybe the business is not exactly what I want right now, but if I keep moving like the way I'm supposed to and reevaluating, and continue to do what I'm supposed to do, eventually it'll take place and start growing. So I think that's a smart.
It is. And sometimes we look at it from a business aspect, where we don't look at it from a ministry aspect. Where, okay, what am I doing? Where am I at? We evaluate everything, and you evaluate, and then you say, okay, what different plans do we need to make? How do we need to pivot? We went through that here 2 years ago, and we pivoted wisely. Rather than you make all the decisions, you put a committee behind you. And so we had a plan, and I believe it was the right plan. And I believe
with COVID,
I believe that God is prospering the church. You look at some of the ministries; they may not be really big, but we have staff in place. We're positioned because God has us where He wants us right now to be able to be a force in this community.
Well, and for you who are watching this, I think the big thing that for you personally to look at is thinking about, if you feel directionless, go to that Jeremiah 29:11, read through that, and then look at those three things, and God, I want to be prospered by you. I want your protection. Let me bloom where I'm planted. Help me to understand that, because I think that we can, in our businesses, can flourish financially, but also we can flourish spiritually, and we can use our businesses for God's glory. So I'm working with a couple of guys that are pretty big in construction, and they do a lot with their abilities. They help a lot of things. They help with putting churches together in other countries, schools together. And so they're using their skill set, their business background, to be able to expand the kingdom of God. So we all can look at how we could do that. My wife's in real estate. How do you do that in real estate? So you can expand it. And she's actually brought people to our church through her business. So we could do that.
Well, it all started with a gardener. Adam and Eve were placed in the garden to work, not to, be frivolous. But God does have a purpose for us, and He does have direction.
Yep.
And we are made for a time such as this.
Yep.
And so many of us get to the point where we're over anxious. We are looking for the next big thing rather than where God has us right now. And I think that this is one chapter in the book that really deserves some really close attention, especially if you're struggling in any of these areas. If you're struggling with why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Why, God? If you're saying why, God, you need to read this chapter.
Which is a good thing to be doing. Keep the communication going with God, but then obviously focus on who He is and what He's done for you. So for us, today is my favorite day because I know I have direction. I know the direction is to prosper. Right. I know He's going to protect me. I know He positions me exactly where He wants me. And that's, I think, the goal for all of us is if we could get that in our minds, at least for when I got that in my mind, I can look at the day, even when I'm frustrated, and it's one of those horrible days, I can still get focused back on Him and say, today's my favorite day, and that's okay to be able to say that and not be frivolous. It's true.
It's true. It is.
It's true.
Today's my favorite day. It has been awesome to be with you here today on this rainy day in Florida.
It's strange to walk around, too.
Yeah, strange to walk around. So thank you for listening. Live intentionally. Be very, very blessed. Have a great day. See you later.
Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD. Today is my favorite day. The views, comments, and opinions expressed here today are those of the hosts and guests alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day, is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Vaught. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Live intentionally and be very blessed, my friends.